everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a couple of days, naughty me. I had a whole full week of teacher prep, teacher prep, teacher prep. By the time I got home, I'd be too tired and I would look like a zombie trying to read this to you, and I don't think you want that. So we're continuing with the Eyes in the Impossible. For the American Cancer Society readathon for the month of August. It's a blind read. I don't know what's happening. I try to give my inferences throughout, and just in case, because we're now getting into the more dramatic portions. So, trigger beware, I guess would be the best way to put that. But we're over halfway done with the book, so hooray. So, today I am going to read, let's see. Some of these chapters are short, so I'll read more than one of them. 21, 22. Yeah, I'll do chapters 21 through 23. I think that would be fair. And then we'll just take it from there after that. All right. Chapter 21. During this low profile time, even though I couldn't be the eyes myself, my reports to the bison still needed to be made. So for the next few days, I skulked into the rounded rock, going slowly, slowly, skulking so slowly it pained me, it ruined me. It was so humiliating to go so slow, but going fast would bring attention. At the rounded rock, I would scamper to the top to meet the assistant eyes and ask them for their reports. I would listen to these reports, determine what was important and what was not, and then Bertrand would convey my report to the bison. It was not a perfect system, but it was all we had. This particular day, I waited at the rounded rock for the assistant eyes to arrive. First was Sonia, as usual, she acted as if she had interrupted a private gathering. "Oh, hello," she said. "I'm just here for the meeting, but I can leave if you want." I reminded Sonia that she'd been coming to our meetings for 600 years, that she was a valuable member of the team and our friend to boot, so there was no need for this shyness. I wanted to tell her that I said exactly this thing to her a million and one times, but didn't because she already began to smile. "Okay," she said, "so I guess I'm here." Angus scampered up at that moment. Oh, that wasn't. Oh, I see. That my screen went bloop bloop, and I was like, "Oh no." Anyway, I digress. Angus scampered at that moment, which was startling because never before had he been close to on time, and by my estimation, this time he was early. "I got a clock," he said. I didn't know what a clock was. I turned to Sonia, hoping she did and that she might explain it, but her look was blank. "It's a human thing," Angus said. "It tells you when to do things and go places. I got one, taught myself time, and now I'm always prompt. By the way," he added, "our meetings are at noon. That is the time word for when the sun is straight above us." This was too much information for me to take in all at once. Angus was using a human device and would always be prompt. It seemed against the natural order of things, but then I remembered that I was wearing an unsightly human-made sweater and thought, seems we are all going through some significant changes. And I decided not to say anything more about it. A great warm shadow swept over us, and I knew Yolanda was above. She landed with her usual chaos clatter of wings and feet. I said hello, and Angus said hello, and Sonia just squinted through her remaining eye in a way that seemed friendly. We waited for Bertrand to on the rounded rock, and I wanted badly to begin, to get our reports out of the way first, and then begin to plan again for the escape of the bison. "Anyone seen him?" I asked. "Not for a bit," Yolanda said. I saw him at the windmill earlier this morning, but that was some time ago. Speaking of time, Angus said and started talking again about his new clock. I found myself losing interest in it, so I looked up at the sun bright above. The sun appreciates it when we appreciate her. We must remember. So even as Angus droned on about the definition of time, we raised our faces to the sun and took in her warmth. Finally, we heard the sound from above, a whistle growing louder. I looked up and it was a dot. Then it was a bird. Then it was Bertrand. Whoa, boy, whoa, 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 he yelled. This is what Bertrand said when he descended quickly. It was something he heard a human say once while riding a horse. He landed and paced back and forth on the rock, and his back arched and his feathers still ruffled. Do I have news? He was huffing loudly. There's a bunch of weird animals near the windmill. They're unlike anything I've ever seen. Weird animals. Are they raccoons? Angus asked. Bertrand gave him an exasperated look. I just said they're unlike anything I've seen. You're a raccoon, and I have seen you, so how could these be raccoons? So they're not raccoons, Angus concluded. There was something in his eyes, though, that Hope suspected even that they really were raccoons. How many of them? I asked. Hundreds, Bertrand yelled. Millions. They're all over the park by the windmill. We gotta go now, he said, and he turned to me. And you don't have to worry. No one will be looking at you. And that's what are with this going on. Hmm, interesting. Chapter 22. And so we all scampered down and made our way to the windmill. Bertrand and Yolanda flew overhead. For years, the windmill area had been covered with tulips, a gorgeous chorus of colors that bloomed like a million tiny sunrises. But then, a short time ago, some kind of weed had taken over the area, killing the flowers and every other nearby plant. These were weeds with prickles and spikes and barbed stalks. Every one of us, even the birds, had unfortunate experiences with these weeds and their antisocial features. I had scars on my legs and hindquarters, and Angus, who had tried to scamper under them, had a nasty streak that started on his shoulder and ran all the way down his back. As we approached the windmill, I got preemptively annoyed about Bertrand bringing us all to see these stabby weeds and their floral victims. But then we all gathered behind some bushes on a rise with a view of the windmill and its environs. From there, we saw hundreds or maybe millions of new creatures that Bertrand had promised. They're eating the weeds, Angus said. Indeed, they were. We watched the animals continue to fan out. When we arrived, they were in a close formation, but as we watched, they spread like water, devouring the tough and spiky weeds like they were the most delicious desserts. What are those creatures? I asked. No one knew. They had long hair or fur, curved horns, and four legs, skinny legs, and stood up a bit like horses, but they were more the size of large dogs. And they were eaters. They ate and ate and ate. It was astounding the way they ate. Okay. Skinny legs, long hair or fur, and horns? What does this sound like to you? I'm thinking it's a goat. Goats like to eat um, weeds and other plants that most animals can't tolerate. So it sounds like they brought some goats to do some natural cleanup. That's pretty cool. I didn't know what we'd be reporting to the bison. Maybe tell them 100 tiny horned horses are about to eat the windmill, Angus said. I knew we needed more information. For example, where they come from. Every so often, there was a new animal in the park. We all remember, for example, when the first loon arrived. The ducks were so happy to have a bird nuttier than themselves. But we never had an invasion like this, a species like no other, and in such vast numbers. Do we talk to them? I asked. I think we do, Bertrand said. But we couldn't just barge down to the massive eaters and announce ourselves. The way they were eating the weeds was chilling. Would they eat us too? They seemed like vegetarians, but how could we be sure? There were so many of them, 1,000, 1,000,000. They could disappear the five of us in seconds. Look, Angus said and pointed to the two of them, both a bit smaller than the others. One was black spotted and the other was a dull color of red clay. They had wandered away from the pack and were making their way to us. I can get closer, Bertrand said. Bertrand was always brave and never scared, and always liked to be first in line for danger. And he didn't really think much of it. He said these things and did these things as naturally as I ate pupusas and Angus opened complicated containers. If they go under the bough of that pine, Bertrand said, I'd be close enough to talk to them, but far enough away that they can't eat me. We all told Bertrand to take care, and he rose into the sky, circling high before swooping low and heading to the tree in question. Meanwhile, we all hid in a dense thicket where we could hear the ensuing conversation. Bertrand dropped in with a great elegance and settled on the bough. He looked down to the two simple creatures. Hello, friends, he said to them. He was perched above, looking friendly enough, casual even, though decidedly out of eating range if they thought him delectable. The two animals looked up, mumbled hello with their mouths full, and went back to eating. This was a start. We thought. They spoke our language and they chose to speak or mumble to Bertrand and not to eat him. Welcome to our home, Bertrand said and smiled down at them. I thought he sounded very regal and magnanimous, and I was proud of him, but the eaters didn't look up this time. They nodded almost imperceptibly and continued eating. It seemed very rude to me. Bertrand cleared his throat. Can I ask where you all come from? He asked. The two eaters looked sidelong at each other as if imploring the other to be the one to answer the question. It was clear that neither of them wanted to stop eating. Finally, the black-spotted one raised his head. He was still chewing with his rounded, incessant motion of his powerful jaws. We're from the mainland, he said, his mouth full. They went back to eating with renewed devotion. Bernard nodded calmly, as if he had just been told the most logical and expected thing. But none of us had ever heard of anything called the mainland. We knew what Maine meant and what land meant, but the two words together meant nothing to us. Angus looked at me and I shrugged. The mainland, huh? Bertrand said. Remind me, where is that again? You mean the gray human settlements surrounding the park? I was so happy Bertrand asked that because it was precisely the question on my mind, too. I would have been too embarrassed to ask. Again, the two eaters looked at each other, begging the other one to be the one to explain. Every time one of them had to speak, this meant time away from eating, and neither could abide that sacrifice. I thought I saw one of them roll his pale eyes. Finally, the reddish one raised his head. The mainland? He said. There was a know-it-all tone in his voice. The mainland? The mainland. He did not sound as so polite or respectful of Bertrand, and I found myself growing impatient with the impertinence of these two furry eaters. Bertrand looked down at this reddish one, smiling but befuddled. I don't understand, he said. You're on an island, the red one said matter-of-factly. A very small island. When you leave here, you cross the sea and you hit the mainland, which is 1 billion times bigger than this place. I find it interesting that the Bertrand, the seagull, and Yolanda don't know about the land beyond the park, across from the ocean. It sounds like the island is like in New York, like near Manhattan, or maybe in the Carolinas. They got lots of little islands there. The author doesn't say where exactly this is. Drinking my delicious coffee beverage. All right, chapter 23. It's difficult to convey the effect this information had on me, on all of us. We stopped breathing. And then a human voice emerged from the pack of weed eaters. He made a kind of high-pitched sound, and the two animals we'd been talking to turned and abruptly left. They joined the rest of their kind, never saying excuse us or goodbye. What a strange species, Bertrand said. Because there was a human nearby, we thought other humans might be nearby too, so we slunk away, planning to regroup on the rounded rock. Once there, we were all individually more confused than before, and collectively more confused than that. They sure like to eat, Yolanda said. Anyone notice that? And what about this mainland thing? Angus said. Do you really believe we're on an island? Bertrand was silent, and I had the feeling he felt responsible, that knowing the extent of the land we stood on was something his perspective might be uniquely suited to. None of us could know, I told him. I should have known, he said. All my life I've stayed close to this park, afraid to fly over the sea. And I should have ventured farther. I would have found out. But none of the birds know, do they? I asked. Bertrand contemplated this. I guess not, but still. Don't feel bad, Sonia said. None of us knew. I should ask the bison, I said. I wonder if they knew all this. I wonder too, Angus said. But you can't see the bison in that sweater. Everyone chimed in, pointing out that visiting the bison would be impossible wearing bright pink. The bison minders would notice instantly. Do you want me to take it off? I asked, my heart filled with the glorious thought that I would soon be free of this itchy cocoon. It always comes down to me, Angus complained. It most certainly doesn't always come down to you, Bertrand said. Stuff like this does, Angus said, but he was, as always, secretly happy to show off his opposable thumbs. He began pulling at the neck of the sweater, but as difficult and painful as it was to get the sweater on, getting it off was far harder. Yelp, I said. I did not mean to yelp. It just made me appear weak. But yelp I did, for the pain was great. Hold still, Angus said. Can anyone help? Bertrand and Yolanda attempted to help, but when they grabbed at the sweater, they pulled its threads and it tightened around my neck. Again, I cried out. They let go. This is useless, Angus said. We can't get it off. He sat back on his haunches. Bertrand breathed loudly through his nostrils. I knew this giving up of Angus's would not sit well with Bertrand. Giving up was the hallmark of the impatient, of the weak, he often said. He could not countenance it. We have to take it apart, Bertrand said. No, Yolanda moaned. It's so beautiful. That was the only way, because Angus felt slighted, and because Bertrand was offended by Angus giving up. Bertrand turned to Sonia. Can you help us? Sonia's one eye brightened. She had a small fingery claws, and she could make things, yes, but more than that, she could take things apart. She could shred anything with those tiny claws, and she quickly went to work. She pulled on the threads, she cut them, she scraped and snapped and shredded. And soon, what had been a sweater was just a tangle of loose thread, which I stepped from as if it was a bad dream. I smiled to my friends. Thank you, I said. Sonia was blushing and fidgeting, and her one eye was wide open in a kind of ecstasy. And thank you, especially Sonia, I said, and she turned her head downward. She couldn't stand the praise. It was nothing, she said. I made my way to the bison alone. The human minders were sometimes nearby in the evening, so I needed to be careful. There was one in particular, a man who watched from and was usually asleep in a hammock near the outer fence, who I had been mindful of. He was a thin, white-haired man who bore a bright red vest for warmth. I made a wide arc around him and then traveled an unusual route through unknown thickets and irrational paths until I made it to their pen. I found them all lying in a huddle on the far corner with a view of the sea. My son, said Freya. We nuzzled. Stay low, she said. The people are not far. With her head, she pushed me to lie down. Beside her, between the three bison boulders, no human could possibly see me. We worried for you, Meredith said. I'm proud of you, Freya said. Your bravery with that child was conveyed to us by Bertrand. I am so proud, but we miss you. Your assistants are not good at this job, Samuel said. Hush, Freya said. They'll get better. They're trying. They're not suited to it. Samuel said, Maybe Sonia. Freya said, Yes, Sonia is the best at the work, Meredith said, but you were born to be the eyes. I was happy to be so praised, happy to be missed. But I can tell you have news, Freya said. We saw about 100 new animals today, I said. 100 different new animals or 100 animals all of one kind? Freya asked. Just the one kind, 100 of them. Lots of different colors, I said. They're new. I've never seen them before. The bison asked me to describe the new animals, and I did. Hairy and hooved with narrow faces and rough-hewn horns. And you said they ate incessantly? Meredith said with a smile. Sounds like goats, Samuel said. Never heard of this word, goat. We had some here long ago, Freya said. Maybe 1,000 years ago? At least that long ago, Meredith said. They did love to eat. Were their eyes like those of a cat, very bright, very light, and with long, narrow pupils? Freya asked. Yes, I said. Their eyes were very much like a cat, but with the pupils going left and right, not up and down. Yep, sounds like goats. Samuel said. I think, dear Samuel, that we've established that they are goats, Freya said. She turned to me. How many did you say there were? About 100, I said, but I realized it could have been 1,000 or 1,000. Actually, I thought it could be far more, somewhere between 100 and 10,000. And what did they say where they came from? I explained the word the goats used, mainland, and how they said we were currently on an island and that where we lived was very small compared to this other place, the mainland, and how this made me feel very confused and a bit small. Freya's eyes had grown sad. I'm so sorry, son, she said. We do live on an island. I was born on the mainland. She said the word quickly in one speedy word. Samuel was born on the mainland too, but now we are here and we are happy. Here is home. There is and there is no way to leave. Uh-oh. Realization hit. There, remember, Johannes's whole plan was to get the bison off the island or out of their pen so that they could be free because he didn't like the idea of them being caged. And now she's telling them that there's no way to leave on an island. Good thing we still have about half of the book left because now we have time to formulate a plan. Hmm. Well, if you like my content, please click like, subscribe, dingling the notification bell, and I will see you for the next reading. Take care, everybody. Roma, Riva, Krishna, Auntie Heather loves you very much, and I love the rest of you too. Bye-bye.